Hello, everyone. Hello. Good morning. Good afternoon. Bonsoir. Bonsoir à tous. I hope that people are joining from France. It's really nice to be here on this. What has sort of become a special day. I've noticed that since we put out the information of this wonderful idea that we had between us, that today has become, all over social media has been awash with tributes for Jean-Pierre Rampal, which has been really lovely to see. So I'm hoping that this is just going to add to this this lovely outpouring of affection for the very great maestro. So without further ado, I would very much like to welcome the guests today, who are the one and only Ransom Wilson and Linda Chesis, who will be joining us right now. There we go.
Hello.
So, super great. Now, this is going to be a very technical show. So there's lots of videos, lots of other content, and so we're going to have to keep our fingers crossed that all the little gremlins are going to be kept at bay, and we can just have a lovely chat about your friend and teacher and inspiration and mentor and everything else. So, welcome.
Thank you.
So, well, I guess so. We just wanted to. I guess I met you in New York, Linda, in February, and we made this lovely interview with you where you were speaking about Rampal, and we sort of thought we must do a Rampal thing. We must do a Rampal thing just to celebrate this. And then I said, well, it must be nearly 20 years. It must be. And then we had a look at Wikipedia, and sure enough, it was going to be 20 years since the passing of the great maestro. And so we thought, let's do a thing. And so this is the thing.
And it's been so wonderful to be able to go back and to look on YouTube and to have all of these incredible memories of performances that I grew up with, basically. That's the reason I'm a flutist. We all are.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to say I first encountered him on a recording on an LP of some Baroque concertos. I was in North Carolina, and I remember my mouth dropped open at the sound and the spirit, the esprit de vie that came across through the speakers. It was unbelievable. So finally, when I got to see him in New York, I think the next year, he was doing this incredible thing. He did what there used to be a late night concert series at what's now called David Geffen Hall. It used to be called Philharmonic Hall, and they had a concert series that started at 11:30 at night, which seems impossible these days. But so he played all the Handel sonatas at 11:30 at night, and then one of the encores, maybe the first encore, was that Mozart sonata that we just listened to. Which just, I mean, everybody was beside themselves with excitement about how the flute could sound. I mean, nobody had ever sounded like this before. Parenthetically, the next day at 2:00, he played all the Bach sonatas.
And you have to also remember that this was the first time I heard him as well, was in Philharmonic Hall on a cold winter night in 1969. And he did this full recital, and then he came out and he played the Gluck. And in fact, it was my very first flute recital that I'd ever attended. And jaw dropped, tears. I just wept. I just had never heard anything so organic and just such direct communication from his lips to the heart of the thousands of listeners. Because you have to remember, these were cult events. They were sold out well in advance. And people were on the stage, packed in like sardines, fire hazards be, forgotten about. And it was a huge, huge event.
Well, I must say, in putting together all, because we've got so much, we've got lots of music to hear from, we've got guests to hear from, but just putting together all of these videos, I have to say, it's just been such a hell of a 2 days just listening to this wonderful music, and it's been lifting, as difficult as it's been technically, it's just been lifting my spirits just listening to this wonderful music. So, Rampal was the teacher of both of you. We're gonna talk a little bit about him as a teacher, and we're going to show a little clip of him in a masterclass situation. How was he as a teacher for you, Ransom?
He taught it completely by example and by inspiration. He didn't want to talk about anything technical. I was at that time exploring. How old must I have been? Like 18 or something. I went. It was in the Nice Summer Academy, which was an amazing place. Everybody who was anybody was there, no matter what country they were from. They were there. I had the great good fortune of being there 2 years in a row, and then Linda came the following summer at my urging, and it was this just again, it was like a cult event that there were people just hanging on. There were 100 people in the class, and every day he let a lot of people play. We just kind of played in rotation. But at the time I was trying to figure out exactly what to do with my breathing, and he had the most amazing silent, fast breathing of anybody I think ever. And I asked him, do you do this? Do that? He just said, breathe. That was the way. That's the way he would.
Or the other thing he'd say is, open your mouth. Open your mouth.
Right.
That was a breathing lesson. And to demonstrate these classes in Nice that were very, very hot days in the south of France, he would take a bottle and he would just go like this and pour it down, completely open throat. He didn't ever seem to have to swallow his water like other mortals. And also, Ransom said he taught by inspiration. It was also, in a way, kind of like behavior modification, because if you were lackluster, sloppy, not particularly engaging, he would not give you the time of day. It wouldn't be humiliating or rude. It would just be deeply disappointing. He would just chat with other people in the room. But if you were on, he was on 100 times more than you were. And he would come right up to your face to play. And the playing that he did in class at the Conservatoire was the most magnificent I've ever heard anyone play the flute, ever.
Well, I think we're going to have an example of this right now. So we're going to see some of this playing right in the face and some of this magnificent breathing. So we're going to have a little snippet of Rampal in action teaching.
C'est difficile, hein, je vais pas. Okay. Yeah, you are nervous. But even if you are nervous, you play beautifully. Beautiful sound. Fischer Discar you did. It's very nice. It's a good inspiration.
Yes.
Anyway, well, there is many things I don't like.
Good.
Of course. The sound is beautiful, but you take too much freedom with the breathing,
Yeah.
And with the rhythm, what they mean, don't move.
That's for me.
That's for you, huh? Huh? Your teacher, but don't move.
No.
It's you.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't move like that, or don't move.
Everywhere.
Don't rush.
Everywhere.
Well, because you are rushing here, For example, da 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 da, which is not a nonsense, Da 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 da, and da di da di da di da da di da. I mean, da da di da. It's the contrary. He also da di da di da di da di da di da 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 di da 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 di da 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 da. Take time to play, not so fast, huh? I try. Don't stop.
So there we are. Wonderful. I guess that was memories for you as well. Ransom, is Ransom frozen? Looks like Ransom may be frozen.
Ransom is.
I thought he's fallen asleep. I think he needs to rejoin. Well, this is good timing for us. Oh no, we got him back. Well, it was good timing because we were going to go to, obviously from this lovely teaching experience and a lovely, beautiful bit of foray, straight to Gaspar Hoyos, who was one of Rampal's very last students, I guess. Short, and I guess at the end of the 90s, and Gaspar shares. So in each of these, we do lots of music, and so we've got guests and videos from people literally all around the world, sharing their passion and their memories and their anecdotes. But also every single bit of message has also got some beautiful music attached to it that is particularly special to each contributor. So we'll go straight into that.
Hi. When I started the flute back in the 80s in Colombia, it was very difficult to get records, sheet music. We didn't have internet at all, of course. And the only flute, when I began studying the flute, the only flute that sometimes came through the radio waves was Jean-Pierre Rampal. I was in awe of this man. And for me, it was like he did not exist. This man playing so beautifully and with this golden flute when I was playing a cheap bandy flute or something. So imagine that. And then in 1998, I did his competition in Paris and I met him. So the only thing I want to tell you is that I remember in that competition when I began to play the Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach Sonata in A minor alone for the first round, and I saw Jean-Pierre Rampal move. to the music I was playing, and it was like, no way, this is not happening. So that's my wonderful souvenir. And after that competition, I met him, and I learned, and I still learn a lot from him. He was a poet of the flute. The flute does not matter, it's the music that matters. And he is still influencing us through his great heart. So thanks for letting me talk about him, and we miss him. Bye.
There we go. So that was Gaspar Hoyos, who's the principal flutist in the Nancy, the opera of Lorraine. Beautiful words, I thought. Really, I thought that he was so affected with Rampal moving to his music. I thought that was gorgeous. So Rampal as a performer, how did you experience him in this way? Ransom, we're back again with Ransom. You keep freezing. We've had internet issues. But we're back.
Yeah, I'm
Good.
back.
Good.
As a performer, yeah.
As a performer.
Yeah. So he had this thing of kind of connecting directly to the listener without, as if he didn't have an instrument, and when you were in the hall, it was amazing. You really thought he was playing just for you. It was extraordinary, and I've never heard that comment about another performer, and that's what virtually everyone would say. He had so much. He had such a generosity of spirit that it went directly out with no filters. And the flute was just incidental. I mean, he would have been great on whatever instrument he picked up. And people were enraptured by this man's playing. I mean, I was one of them. I didn't know what to do. I just knew that I had to get close to him. I had to find out what this was all about. I'd never heard a flute played this way before or since, frankly.
So. And you, Linda, what was a similar experience?
I echo Ransom's comments entirely, and I think as a performer, he was so natural and at home on stage. He could just be making a joke, and he was just casual, and he just walks on stage. He was who he was all the time. He just was completely natural. There were no mannerisms about his playing or anything about him. It was all just his heart to yours, It was so direct.
So it didn't have like an offstage persona and onstage. It was he felt the same in both circumstances, or did he have could you tell when he was sort of building up for a show or anything like that, or was it just sort of he was just like this all the time?
No, I saw him in a Chinese restaurant 15 minutes before a concert. He absolutely. There was no transition. There was no need for a transition. It was just him all the time.
Wonderful. Well, we have we've all been talking to Denis Verhulst, who's the president of the Rampal Association, and he's been extremely helpful with some of the recordings that we found and lots of the photographs as well. And so we've got a little clip from him talking about actually him at Rampal as a performer and a lot of the things that the critics had to say, which is a wonderful list, which we can watch now and then I guess talk about in a minute. So this is from Denis Verhulst.
Hello, my name is Denis Verhulst, and I'm responsible for the Jean-Pierre Rampal Association in France, which has been founded now 15 years ago, and which tries to perpetuate his artistry and to let the young generation discover who this fantastic virtuoso and musician was. It's always very difficult to speak about Jean-Pierre Rampal within a few words or a few minutes, because his art was so rich, whether you speak about flute playing, his expression, his humanity. Many aspects of his playing have been already celebrated since the very beginning of his career 70 years ago. His tone, marvelous tone, his stupendous virtuosity, his breath control, his phrasing. But above all, I think the most distinctive character of his artistry is the prodigious life of his playing, the considerable sense of communication, musical communication that he had. And this, to me, has three main explanations. The first one is his presence. He had a fantastic stage presence whenever he came on stage. The stage and the public were really his, and they were really spellbinding concerts. I remember that I read once a critic who said that when he was coming doing his first tours in the US at the beginning of the 60s, and he had been already there a couple of times, and when he was coming back, the critic said that the people were driving from 100 miles away, sort of drawn there by sort of obscure force to come and listen to him. So much his presence was there. And also another factor is that his playing is entirely natural. It's a fully natural way of playing. It's a fully vocal art of playing. And thanks to prodigious mastery, he only has to imagine what he wants to do to be able to realize it. And this is what explains a fantastic phrasing, really subtle phrasing, and really something extraordinary that people had never heard before. And also a fantastic vitality in the playing. And last but not least, if music always came first for him, he had a real passion for the instrument, but a sane passion, a passion for the physical side of the instrument, for the breath and for the sound. And the sound was something which was so important. Of course, it's your voice. And he was speaking very often to his students saying, il faut un son qui parle, a sound which speaks. And he always saying for the vocal side that in order to play the flute well, you need to be in love with the tenor voice. And for the sound, I would like to quote a few of the critics I've read. I've read a great deal of them. I would say easily over 10,000 critics of his concerts. And the way that the sound is described is extremely interesting because they use an incredible number of terms. I would quote a few here. For instance, soft-edged, sweet, dense, rounded, honeyed, velvety, pearly, creamy, haunting, luscious, caressing, exquisite, liquid. And one of the critics even said it's an intoxicatingly honeyed tone, a warm and mellifluous tone. And this, I think, is extremely important. And Maurice Allard, the famous French bassoon player, said that he was a tone painter. And I've chosen two recordings, and one of them is of the slow movement of the De Vienne, 7th Concerto in E minor, is the end of it. And it's recorded in 1969 when he's in his prime. The tone is just a marvel. The playing is dreamlike. And he manages to end the movement with a supernatural note, a note really coming from nowhere. And after that, you will listen to another part of the same concerto, the last movement part of it. And that was recorded live in 1974, also in his prime years, and with the Minneapolis Orchestra under the baton of Dennis Russell Davis in 1974. And there again, you will have an opportunity to witness another side of Jean-Pierre's concert in the States, a prodigious excitation and a marvelous joy of music. And that is the main thing that will be remembered surely about Jean-Pierre Rampal is that he made you love really music. He made you love life and enjoy.
So,
Wow.
Yeah.
I know.
That was live too.
It's ridiculous. I mean, it's funny because it's because in this feed, because I can see you guys as well, and we're just like, I think we're all just grinning the entire time whenever Rampal's playing. It's just wonderful.
So we would ask him, Jean-Pierre, so fast. He said, j'ai faim. He wanted to go out to eat. I said, finish the concert.
Well, I mean, so I wanted to talk to you about as a flutist, as a flute player, as a technician. What I mean, it's sort of it's otherworldly at times, and it's obviously it's super virtuoso, but also just so much shape and light and joy and personality. It's not just sort of it's super fast, but also just so great. As a technician, did you ever witness him? Practicing much or getting stuck or getting.
I was never aware of him practicing ever. I think that he just had this natural gift. I mean, it's also a French thing. They say, yeah, I never practice, but the fact is that they start them so early in doing solfège at 6 and 7 that by the time they get to their instrument, they're already virtuosos with their ears. So the instrument is incidental to their understanding of music. So yeah, it's easy to say, well, I never practiced, because you spent the first 20 years of your life having music beaten into you by the French educational system.
But Ransom, we have to remember that Jean-Pierre was en route to becoming a doctor. He wasn't really doing that whole music tradition. So for him, it was, he wasn't beaten down by all the solfège, and it was always fresh, no matter what. It always seemed, like he was playing it for the first time.
Yeah, well, I think he had no fear. That's the thing, and we all experience fear at some time or other. He had none. I remember this may seem off topic at first. Back in the 70s, whenever it came out, that this movie called The Exorcist, it was the most horrifying movie that had ever been made to that point, and people were screaming, people were having breakdowns. Jean-Pierre went to see it in New York in the afternoon and thought it was hilariously funny. So, yeah, it gave me nightmares for months, by the way.
Well, the one clip that we've got that both of you had in common, that you both requested for something that you wanted to hear, was this extremely and I can't believe I'd never seen it before. This extraordinary Poulenc cantilena with Poulenc at the piano in the late 50s. So we're gonna have a listen to an excerpt of that now. I should express to people there is if you later there'll be a link so you can download a PDF which has got all of these links, so you can listen and enjoy all of these beautiful performances at your leisure. We're only going to give you a little taster of this, and a lot of it was fresh and new to me. So I'm sure it is to a lot of our the people watching at the moment as well. So, but we're going to hear a little bit of Poulenc, with Poulenc at the piano and Rampal on the flute. Enjoy. So yeah, wonderful. Oh, can you hear me? You can hear me. We're muting while the videos are on, so you can't hear us taking a sip of tea. So yeah, it's interesting whenever you hear, obviously you have Rampal there, but you also have Poulenc, and so it's just like, that's the speed. That, you know, there need not be any more arguments. That's the composer. Yeah, it's like watching Stravinsky do Rite of Spring. It's just like, well, why is anyone else doing it on this? We have the evidence. This is the speed. But also, that's the atmosphere, and that's just crystalline beauty of tone. Yeah.
Well, Poulenc had some very colorful things to say about that movement, because, you know, we have to remember Poulenc was both the kind of cafe pianist that you hear in, say, in the last movement, but he also was deeply religious and wrote some very important religious works. And I hope this doesn't offend anyone when I say this, but his description of that movement was the streetwalker who enters the cathedral and becomes a virgin.
Wow.
I know, it's surprising. A different idea about that piece, but I'm struck by just how much humanity comes through Jean-Pierre's sound, even back in 1955 or whatever that was. Just, I mean, it sounds like him right away. Right away, you know it's him, because there's nothing between him and the music.
Right, but the other thing that's so remarkable, especially in this example of the Poulenc, is that it isn't, his emotions are completely open, but he doesn't wear them on his sleeve in any kind of, there's a kind of insouciance, right, about it. It's just very natural. It's a natural expression, but it comes powerfully.
You know, it doesn't feel melodramatic or put on. It just feels like all heart. Like I said, it's been a great couple of days. I've been basking and watching all these videos for the last couple of days, putting this together. I highly recommend everyone watching does the same. You can go on a Rampal rabbit hole and be delighted for days. Mm-hmm. even on YouTube, and when the quality of recording isn't even great. But wonderful. Well, we have another contribution from Berlin this time. Fresh, another person who had a big influence on his playing and his flute musicianship from Rampal, and we have Emmanuel Hood, another Haynes artist. This is we're packing it full of Haynes artists. So he's going to share his thoughts and his favorites as well.
Hello, everybody. This is Emmanuel Pahu. I'm so proud. This is Emmanuel Pahu. I'm so proud to be part of the Haynes family and to celebrate today the memory of our amazing and greatest Jean-Pierre Rampal. He's been such an inspiration for generations of us, flute players, and for other musicians. I recall when I was a kid, I was dreaming of listening to his concert live. Through his recording, he belonged to those flutists that, make you dream and could make bridges across the instruments, not just for the sake of the flute playing, but just generally for the music making. He was such a tremendous performer and teacher, and as an example, he was really getting the best out of everybody. I was lucky enough to study in Paris, in the Conservatoire, with Alain Marion, one of his closest friends and students, and then later on to perform a couple of concerts with them. And actually the first time I had met Jean-Pierre Rampal and really had a lesson with him was back when I was 18 years old, together with this piece here. So that's the signature of Jean-Pierre Rampal and the nice few words that he wrote. And I remember during this masterclass, it was close to Paris, during a flute convention. He also played for another fellow student, the Reinecke concerto, the slow movement. It was so beautiful. He couldn't stop, and we were all crying by the beauty of the melodies that he was playing. So it was just really, truly amazing. And let me just point out that this stage, that there is this picture where Rampal is teaching a little boy, and there's a rumor on the social media that this boy might be me. Well, it is not, because I met Jean-Pierre much later on. So if there's somebody out there, and I know there must be, probably a Haynes flute player, show up, speak up, and let us know who you are on this picture. That would be just so great to know who truly that kid is. All right, so friends, spend a wonderful time together with our host Ransom Wilson and leader Chesis. We're going to have a great time celebrating and remembering Jean-Pierre Rampal. One of my favorite recordings of his, after listening to so many great things of his, like Schubert Variations, Reinecke Concerto, I think something really special was Cacciatorian Concerto, particularly his live Prague version when he performed it for the first time. I think that was just, he was on fire and rocked it really beautifully. Enjoy.
So, lovely message from Emmanuel there, and so yeah, I mean, it was obviously a huge influence on him, a huge influence on the entire generation, and of flute players, and obviously still to come. What was he like as a as a colleague? I mean, were you? I mean, because I guess this is the wish is always. And I think that sometimes the privilege is whenever the student can then become the colleague and work alongside or work with, whether that's teaching or performing.
Well, his generosity extended to, first of all, the entire flute world. So while he was alive and he was kind of the king of the whole flute world, there was no animosity that I was aware of between camps, because everybody looked at this incredibly warm, wonderful person that was sincerely liked you. And I asked him once what his philosophy of life was. He said, I like everybody, and I assume everybody likes me. That was it. And what a simple, but I mean, if one could get there, it would be such a beautiful life.
Almost Buddhist,
Exactly. But I mean, once he had kind of accepted you into the fold, and you were going to do a concert with him, you were treated completely as an equal. And I remember in the recording that I made with him in Italy, he would ask me questions. He would ask me what I thought about things, and it was extraordinary because it was this just incredible generosity of spirit. He didn't have any barriers between people. He was just pure generosity. I often say that I feel I learned more from him as a person than I did as a musician, but that would be hard to say because I learned so much from him as a musician. Linda, you must have had
similar kinds of. The only time that I felt that he had some semblance of disdain was for American flute articulation. And this was I studied art history at college, and I came to France to study with Rampal after. And for the first several months, he was saying to me, no da da, da 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 da, no da. I said, wow, not only is he a fantastic flutist, but he's brilliant. He knows about Marcel Duchamp and surrealism and art movements. And no, he was saying, no, no, don't cheat tongue, da, 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 da. And that was basically one of his big philosophies and his real pet peeves, I have to say. So all of my students know that.
Know about da, da. Yeah, I mean, Linda and I can listen to something and we'll both look at each other at a certain point and just say, da, da.
That's all we have to say.
Well, we've got one of it, because Ransom, you were talking about this, the collaboration that you had in Italy with Claudio Shimoni and this Solisti Veneti. We're going to hear a little excerpt of this wonderful thing, and I can assure you, one thing I can assure you is there is no da-da in this because it's too fast to ever go da-da. It's more like so it's machine gun articulation and amazing fingers. This is really the first time I listened to this. I guess it was about a month and a half ago. I guess this got sent around, and I sat and I listened. And the second movement is wonderful. You'll find that on YouTube also. And this third movement, I just found myself grinning the entire time. So I hope you all do likewise. So
I never could talk that fast. There's no way.
that was amazing. For those after that, if you can go to the Haynes YouTube channel. I've just I uploaded that just before we came on air. You can listen to the entire thing, and it's not such a. I mean, I hadn't heard it before, and the first time I heard it, it was just blew me away. So that's fresh on the internet for you to have a look at that entire movement. Next, so we wanted to talk about the next on the menu was Rampal and Haynes. So, because I mean, and how does it feel for you guys now to sort of be part of the same clan? Does it feel like you're sort of having this sort of returning to home turf, or does it feel? Do you have that same sort of feeling? Because
I started on my first real flute was a Haynes. And when I went to Paris to study with him, I played Haynes. Of course, he made me switch out my B foot for C foot. First thing I had to do. And but other than that, I stayed with Haynes for a very, very long time. And I mean, his flutes were just extraordinary. And the funny thing, I always remember discussing looking for new flutes and looking for head joints. And he'd always say, look at his flute. He said, my flute is like a child. You have children. You don't chop the head off one child and put it on another child. This is your flute.
I agree with him about that. Yeah. Now, I mean, the thing is that starting with Barrère, there was always this kind of French tradition of French players, and after all, the instrument was based on one of Louis Lot's instruments, so it makes perfect sense. But first of all, never B-foot. He never played B-foot in his life. Even when he had to play the Cacciatorian, which has a low B in it, he would just pull the head joint way out and lip it down. He refused to play B-foot because he thought it ruined the sound. And there's an extraordinary lightness and vibrancy about his sound that you really can only get from a C-foot. Have to say, B-foot has much more projection, in my opinion. So it's not for everybody, but I think that he was attracted to the sound. He had played, this Louis Lot, and so he needed something. The Louis Lot was very fragile. It was very thin gold. It could be easily bent, and the mechanism on those flutes has to always be rebuilt. So when he got a real flute, a modern flute that had virtually the same sound as his Louis Lot, he was overjoyed. I mean, he talked about it constantly, about how amazing it was, and we all. My first real flute was a Haynes as well, but we all went and tried other things. But now we're back because there's something intoxicating about the sound that no one else has. And so I'm back and happy to be back.
As am I. So.
Cool. Well, we've got a lovely. I've got a little excerpt of. I don't even know what this was for. It seems like it's on YouTube in full, and it's a really interesting historic video about the Haynes Company. But this is a little bit where it shows Jean-Pierre in town. So it's a short video.
Rampal is in town. He takes his Haynes right into the shop for a tune-up.
Hi, Lou. How are you? Hi, nice to see you. I have a small problem with my flute. I got my first Haynes in '58, And since then, I never played something else. In fact, I play always the same flute because I think that to be comfortable with an instrument, you have to give it the chance to be played. And it must be a part of your body. And this first flute is really a part of my body. Hello, gentlemen. How are you? It's impossible to find a place like here where you can pick up any kind of instrument which is ready and you play it, you can give a recital. Then it's really the perfection of making the flute, which needs not only ability to do it, but love. You know, they must love their profession, otherwise they cannot do it.
So that was a lovely little...
Never seen that before.
You haven't seen it? Oh,
No.
great. Very pleased to bring something new.
From Piedmont Street.
Yes, indeed. Well, I was there. I was there the first time only last year. I did a walkabout and I did like a little pilgrimage to Piedmont Street, which is now condos. But like they look like nice condos, but condos with such a history. What's it like to hear? You know, because I guess because you hear so much of his playing, but what's it like to hear him speak like that again? Does that sort of bring a catch to your throat? How does it?
Oh yeah, when I saw him walk in, when he walked in, he had kind of like a little, almost like an Indian head wobble. That was that was you couldn't. I mean, I certainly can't imitate it, and you couldn't even describe it. But it was kind of like a swagger, you know. I don't know. He's like Monsieur La Péjodie or something.
Wonderful.
It was truly larger than life. That would be, I think, the best way to describe him. You know.
Well, I was going to say the next on the agenda is Rampal as a superstar. I mean, and you know, because he was huge. I mean, the next clip that we're gonna enjoy is on a big famous TV show, and so he was huge. What was it? I guess he was the first fluting superstar. And how did that affect? Did you notice it affecting him? You know, in day to day, or
he was delighted. I mean, it didn't really, but he would, in a way, underestimate all of the fame he had amongst other classical musicians and in the classical world. But when he was invited to participate on what we're about to see, he was just so thrilled and delighted that he'd finally really made it.
That's right.
I think we have to have it. We have it a taste. It's short, but I think it's very, very sweet indeed. Enjoy. Well,
ladies and gentlemen, Jean-Pierre Rampal. Yeah! Do it. Now?
Yes.
Lo, hear the gentle lark, weary of rest, from his moist cabinet mounts up on high, and wakes the morning from whose silver breast the sun ariseth in true majesty. The sun ariseth in true majesty.
so we lost. Oh, he's there. We temporarily lost you, Ransom. We got you back. You back.
I wasn't able to watch any of that because my internet did something weird. So
Wow.
Well, I
I'm
thought
out in
you
the,
were
I'm out
on
in the woods, so we're lucky you're seeing me at all.
you're on the floor laughing because I was basically.
That is
He loved that. He just thought that was great. And then when he did the bowling suite and how that took off, it's basically that was the first big crossover success any classical artist had. And I was in Nice this summer that he was driving around with his gold Jaguar convertible that he said he paid for with the royalties from the bowling suite. You know.
Very nice too. Oh, yes.
But also, Ransom and I were talking about this, that so many celebrities would come to his events, and there were always these incredible parties afterwards at Elaine's on the East Side. And this was in the 80s, I guess, right? And Woody Allen would be there, and Claudel Colbert, and just all kinds of, people was just part of his group.
And he would eat.
Somebody wrote in the comments that Rampal was mentioned in a Woody Allen movie.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a good observation there in the comments. And so you're going to.
He would eat 5 or 6 platters of whatever everybody had ordered, and he would eat off everybody else's plate, and it was, bon vivant was written. I mean, that if you look up bon vivant in the dictionary, there's a picture of Jean-Pierre. It's just he was that. That was what he was. He was about loving life. He loved everything about life, and that of course included eating. And he did a lot of it.
He did, and he enjoyed it immensely. And also, and then he would have these incredible dinners, and then he'd pick up the tab for everybody.
Everybody.
He was so just incredibly generous.
Around the world. I mean, it wasn't just in New York. He did it around the world. After every concert, he paid for dinner for everyone. I mean, who does that? It was amazing.
Amazing. Well, we've got another little clip from Marseille, from Rampal's home turf. We've got a lovely little message from Jean-Louis, the Paganini of the piccolo, Jean-Louis Baumadier, who's got some nice stories about studying. Well, you can watch and enjoy.
Ma vie avec la famille Rampal a commencé en 1962, lorsque je me suis inscrit au Conservatoire de Marseille et que le professeur de flûte était Joseph Rampal. Sa technique, c'était de faire des duos et de mettre dans l'oreille du flûtiste un très beau son. Et c'est une technique qui a marché avec beaucoup d'élèves. Je ne savais pas que le fils de Joseph Rampal jouait de la flûte, mais comme j'étais très mordu, très intéressé à la flûte, j'achetais des disques et j'ai découvert un jour, mon premier disque était un disque de Jean-Pierre Rampal, qui était le fils de mon professeur. Et ce premier disque, c'était un disque de sonate pour flûte et clavecin du XVIIIe siècle, avec la sonate de AC, que j'adorais, celle qu'on joue plus beaucoup, qui fait... Ça a été ma révélation, et de ce jour, j'ai absolument travaillé ma flûte avec fureur. Ensuite, j'ai connu Jean-Pierre Rampal à l'Académie de Nice. C'était un rassemblement extraordinaire de flûtistes. Il y avait une centaine de flûtistes de tous les pays, beaucoup d'Américains, beaucoup de pointures comme András Chadorian ou Bob Stallman. Et franchement, je me sentais pas très fort. Donc je suis revenu l'année suivante. L'année suivante, Jean-Pierre Rampal m'a beaucoup encouragé, notamment à faire le concours de Genève. Ensuite, je suis rentré dans la classe de Jean-Pierre au Conservatoire supérieur de Paris. C'était cette période quand on travaillait, je me souviens avoir travaillé les cadences du concerto de Mozart par Tafanel. Et Jean-Pierre m'a dit, moi je vais t'apprendre à le jouer comme le jouait mon père. Et la semaine d'après, je suis revenu au conservatoire, je lui ai joué, il m'a dit, ah toi, tu l'as travaillé avec mon père. Mais j'ai dit, mais non, je l'ai travaillé la semaine dernière. Voilà, c'était extraordinaire quand on faisait des duos de flûte. Parfois, Jean-Pierre aimait beaucoup jouer en duo. Et parfois, un jour, il m'a dit, reste, on va faire des duos. Et à ce moment-là, on avait le son qui se décuplait, je sentais le diaphragme qui se collait à l'omoplate. C'était extraordinaire, ça. C'est quelque chose que les gens ne peuvent peut-être pas apprécier par les disques ou par les vidéos, cette présence physique, cette présence sonore. C'est quelque chose qu'on n'a pas exactement dans les disques et qu'on ressentait quand on faisait de l'ensemble avec lui. Ensuite, j'ai eu ma carrière et puis j'étais à l'Orchestre National et puis Jean-Pierre a accepté de diriger les concertos de Vivaldi pour piccolo avec l'Orchestre National. Ça a été extraordinaire. Là aussi, sa présence, ça m'a totalement galvanisé. Et à la fin, alors qu'on devait reprendre, les musiciens voulaient qu'on reprenne un passage ou deux, il a dit mais c'est très bien comme ça, il a plié la partition et on est allé au café en face pour boire un pastis, la boisson marseillaise. Ensuite, on a fait plusieurs concerts. D'abord, on les voit là, au parc de Sceaux. Et là, alors que justement on buvait l'apéritif, comme j'étais avec mes collègues Patrick Gallois, Philippe Pierlot, Philippe Gauthier, éminents flûtistes, modestement, j'ai dit, moi qui joue du piccolo, je vais faire la 5e flûte. Et là, Jean-Pierre est allé chercher la flûte basse. J'avais jamais joué de la flûte basse et je me suis retrouvé au concert, 3 heures après, à faire tout le concert, les concertos de Bois-Mortier à la flûte basse. Et ensuite, quand il y a eu les 60 ans de Jean-Pierre Rampal, à la salle Pleyel, nous avons rejoué ce concert Bois-Mortier à 5 flûtes, où je faisais aussi la flûte basse. Mais là, je m'étais un peu entraîné. Et ensuite, il y a eu l'hommage à Joseph Rampal en 1983 à Saint-Victor à Marseille, à l'église, où nous avons joué aussi à 8 flûtes, le Bois-Mortier. Il m'avait prêté sa magnifique flûte en argent, une Armstrong, je crois, j'en suis sûr. Et là, vous avez donc Philippe Pierlot, Jean-Pierre Rampal, Alain Marion, moi-même, Marius Boeuf, Maxence Larieux, Jean Patero, Geneviève Amar, que j'ai toujours eu une relation affective avec Jean-Pierre Rampal, qui était pour moi une espèce de père spirituel, et j'ai gardé des relations d'affection.
So warm words there from Jean-Louis and lovely memories. I wanted to I mean, because like I said, it's an ambition a lot of the time for the student to become the colleague of the teacher, and I think sometimes even more pleasant is when the student becomes the friend of the teacher. So what was he like as a friend? I think we may have lost Ransom again. Otherwise, he's being extremely still. Ransom's email, his internet has been up and down. I think.
He had a fantastic sense of humor, and he just was a great, wonderful person just to hang out with, to go to sushi bars, and he would just recount incredible stories. Remember stories he'd say, "Oh, I went to Salvador Dali's house in in Spain, and his swimming pool, the floor was covered with sea urchins. So let's have some more uni. He loved sea urchins, and he would order bowl after bowl of uni in the Japanese restaurant. And finally, the sushi chef said, "Mr. Rampal, we don't have any more. We finished it." Yes.
He had a sushi restaurant out of sea urchin. That's quite something. Well, while we get Ransom back on track, we can hear from the very. This is a perfect segue. From the very land of sushi and everything else gloriously Japanese. We've got a really nice message from Shigenori Kudo.
Hello everybody. I'm Shigenori Kudo. Today, May 20, death day of 20th of Jean-Pierre Rampal. 20 years. Time passed quickly. I have a lot of memories about him. Fortunately, I had the opportunity to play with him in France, in Spain, in Italy, in the United States, in Japan. I will tell you some memories, maybe. I cannot say everything, but Jean-Pierre, he sleep each time a concert. Before the concert, he sleep. Yeah, I remember in the south of Spain, we were in Cadaqués Festival. After the big, long lunch, we start 1 o'clock p.m. We finish 5 p.m. and concert start at 10. So he said me, "Shigenori, wake me up just 1 hour before the concert." "Okay, monsieur. Okay. Of course, I cannot sleep. I didn't feel relieved, so I practice." And about 9 o'clock, I was very tired. I practice because with him always we just practice one time. So I wake him up, and I slept well. He waked up with 2 big eyes and in great shape, unbelievable. So we play, you understand what happened after. How was the concert? Wonderful. I remember. And in the class, he said always, "Forget to play the flute." And he said also, technique should be perfect to forget it. Yeah, I think he had a natural thing, and he enjoyed very much the life, and he was always positive. Now I show you my flute. I have 2 gold Haynes flute. This is a new one, 53,000 something. I just the sound. Sounds good. And another one is very old. I got in New York the 30,000. This flute is very old. Yeah. The Jean-Pierre's Haynes was 929,333. So it's just one year different. I like very much this flute. I like very much these sounds. So I think we are in difficult moment in the world, but sometimes musician needs the time, to think, to practice, and to try everything. So I'm sure the world will come back. So be careful and be musical. À bientôt.
Transcription pour flûte et c'était Jean-Pierre Rampal. La perfection.
La perfezione, il poeta.
C'est la perfection, c'est le poète.
Fantastique.
So I deliberately left. Good to have you back, Ransom. I deliberately left that in at the end with Pavarotti because Pavarotti just says he's a poet, fantastic, and and to see the admiration obviously there from the greatest tenor that ever drew breath, or at least one of them. But before you were cruelly cut off by whatever your internet service provider is, Ransom. I was talking to Linda about Rampal not only as a colleague, which is obviously one of the things that as students what we aspire to, but also as a friend as well, and how he was as a friend of yours as well as a colleague.
Well, he was. He was busy. He was busy constantly, but he always had time to say hello. Or he had all these stories about him waiting around before his concert started so he could give a ticket to a friend. He just, that was more important to him in a certain way than the concert itself was the connection with a friend. So as I said, I feel like I learned more from him almost as about how to be a good person and how to be a generous person than I did about being a musician. It's I think that's what really set him apart. The thing is, at the time when he was prominent in Paris, there were a lot of flute players playing the flute technically at that level, and it was the highest level in the world. There was no question about it. And the country of France was full of them. The training was such that the technical level that was reached by people was higher than anyone could imagine. But what set him apart was this humanity, this overwhelming need to communicate with people, and that's why his playing is so infused with magic, because he had something that is very rarely encountered. It's just this unbridled love for his fellow man, and
he was indefatigable. The amount of energy this person had and imbued. So when you were around him, the energy level was always really elevated. So it was always a party, and he always loved groups of people, and he loved to be surrounded and he loved to be. He lived to be on stage. I think he was really bummed out when he couldn't perform, and he was performing. I mean, how many concerts a year? Denis would know for sure, but hundreds.
Well, the year that I was studying with him in Paris, he told me he had 275 concerts, which I know what it's like to have 75, and that's a killer. I mean, that's horrible, and he just thrived on it. It's really all he knew. Finally, we all knew that he was going to basically drop dead on stage, to put it crudely, because he couldn't imagine life without music.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And also living as the bon vivant as well. It's like you can have a good time or a long time. I think that's the choice. But he did well. One of the lovely things that we've received for this particular broadcast is a message from Jean-Pierre's widow. So we're now going to hear especially a special recorded message, especially from Françoise, Madame Françoise Rampal.
J'apprends avec plaisir que Hans a la belle idée de donner un hommage pour Jean-Pierre Rampal. Je suis très fière, et je vous remercie infiniment. Et c'est très beau car tous les petits pourront voir leur cher Jean-Pierre Rampal. Et vraiment, vous voyez qu'il n'est pas oublié. Merci à vous tous. Et à très bientôt.
So a little greeting there from obviously his partner for many years. It seems to be beautifully rounding off. We've now talked for an hour and 20 minutes, and I can still see that there's still over 230 people that is still with us from the beginning. Which is, I thought that they would sort of come and then go, but they've come and then they've stayed, which is really lovely. And I'm not surprised, because the music is what keeps us all here, and it's what keeps us all going. At the moment, any final thoughts from you, Ransom?
Well, I remember telling him once. I remember he had a particular brand of whiskey that he liked, so I remember bringing him a bottle at his hotel in New York with a note that said, "You'll be remembered forever." And he was very embarrassed by that. He said, "Don't say things like that. Like it's not true, and it's too selfish or something." But in fact, it's happening. He is still being remembered because there's no one like him. And thank God, there were recordings. I mean, who knows? Maybe Taffanel played this way too, but there's not even one recording of him. But we have video, we have his collaborations with great artists, and so his legacy, and you have his students, and we're trying to carry on the tradition. I feel like I'm the holder of the flame in a certain way, because it's a kind of playing that's kind of going out of fashion. Mm-hmm. But my God, when you hear it, there's nothing like it. I mean, I still get goosebumps listening to some of those recordings. It's extraordinary.
And Shigenori and I were at the conservatoire together, so it was just great to see him. So Shigenori, when you're watching this, you're probably sleeping because you're in Tokyo and it's 3-4 o'clock in the morning. But it was just great to see him and to hear his thinking about this. But what's wonderful, I think, about the recordings, unlike today when everything is edited within an inch of its life, I sat in on many recording sessions with him. And I remember one time the engineer said, "Jean-Pierre, don't you want to do that one phrase one more time?" And he said, "I just played 20,000 notes right. You want me to fix 3 wrong notes?" And that about sums it up.
Well, we're going to have to say cheerio, we have to round it up, but we're going to close this particular celebration, and it really is a celebration, and it's been so wonderful. Like I say, even just to research it's been wonderful. So I want to obviously thank everyone who has contributed to this today. There's been time and effort put into putting the videos together and everything else. I want to thank the artists. I want to thank you, Linda, and you, Ransom. You're great friends and colleagues, and I just want to thank you for that. And just before we go, what we're going to be played out with is this is one of your choices, Linda. This is the Ballad of Hell CP Bach, and you have the story behind this one. This is with Boulez.
So Boulez. So Jean-Pierre was doing the recording of this concerto in D minor with Boulez, who, as we know, loved his rhythm, very strict. And he said that Rampal recounts the story. He wanted to take it so fast that I couldn't possibly rush. So he started at about, 160 to the quarter. And at the end of this recording, it's close to 176. So much for that.
Well, we're good. So we're going to hear that. We're going to say thank you very much to both of you. And it's been lovely. It's been an education. Hopefully, it's been, certainly for me. Certainly, I'm sure for all those people that are watching. So yeah, thanks for being involved. And so we're gonna say cheerio and thank you very much. And we're gonna have a CP Bach out of hell.
Thank you, Gareth.
Thanks so much.
Okay.